Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansi. I want to welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see it. And today we got a very, very serious show for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want today's full show before it comes out on YouTube, it is streaming for free on Apple Podcasts and Spotify on the Dreamers Pro Podcast. You can catch that in the comment section below. Anyway, let me get into this topic here. This is a pretty big one. Yesterday, Stephen A. Smith brought a piece of information to my attention that I was unaware of. And as a matter of fact, Stephen A. Smith, this show he produced on it, ended up generating already 500,000 views. So Stephen A. Smith is bringing in major numbers. So anyway, what happened? Stephen A. Smith was reacting to a story that came out surrounding former ESPN employee Mark Jackson. As you guys know, when Mark Jackson was let go of by ESPN, I was one of the people that was basically saying I didn't like that decision. I liked the job that Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy was doing. Now, I want to quickly read from the Daily Mail. There's so many articles. I just want to read from this one. It says, Mark Jackson loses job calling Knicks games after team bans him from playing as franchise president Leon Rose blocks arrangement. It continues on. Mark Jackson has lost his job as a fill-in Knicks broadcaster for this season, according to a new report. Jackson, who was drafted by the franchise in 1987, was reportedly set to call some games for his old franchise on MSG Network this season after being laid off by ESPN. But according to the New York Post, the arrangement will not go ahead after team president Leon Rose banned Jackson from traveling on the team plane. It continues on. According to unnamed sources cited in the report, the decision was made partly because of Jackson's history with Knicks assistant Darren Ehrman, who he previously fired from his staff in Golden State in 2014. It also goes on to say a few other things. Jackson also would have been prohibited from traveling on the team bus and staying in the team hotel. The team's other broadcasters are permitted to travel with the team. The former guard, who was meant to call Knicks games this season when Clyde Frazier was off, including the team's upcoming 5-game road trip. Ehrman was fired from Jackson's Golden State staff after reportedly secretly recording conversations between coaches and players, ESPN said at the time, alongside Knicks play-by-play man Mike Breen and former Knicks coach Jeff Van Gundy. Jackson was previously part of ESPN's NBA Finals crew. The article then goes on to say a few other things. So this news comes out, right? This news comes out, and Stephen A. Smith, who knows Mark Jackson and all of the people involved, I assume, he took to the Stephen A. Smith show and he totally went off. He was dropping he seemed like he lost it. And to me, it was a show of passion and frustration for what Mark Jackson was going through. And Mark Jackson actually put out a statement, and we'll play some of it throughout the audio, where he said that he was the one that turned down the Knicks job and he didn't appreciate how he's constantly being attacked and his legacy is being tarnished by unnamed sources, because they don't really go into that. So what we want to do is want to play exactly what Stephen A. Smith said on his show about the situation with Mark Jackson. I want you guys to listen to it in its entirety, and then we're going to come back and give you guys our thoughts. Take a listen to what Stephen A. Smith had to say here.
When an inordinate amount of cuts took place and people were laid off, he was one of those casualties. Well, he's made news for another reason. Because Mark Jackson was supposed to be calling games, that is, for the MSG networks. But it didn't happen. It was planned for Jackson to help fill in for Walt Clyde Frazier when he had nights off. And because that didn't transpire as people expected, there were numerous reports out that Mark Jackson had been fired. He had accepted the job. He was going to be calling games for the New York Knicks. And then all of a sudden, something must have happened. So Mark Jackson is not going to be calling games in place of Walt Clyde Frazier on the New York Knicks. Well, that's according to reports. That's according to reporters and news publications. I'd rather hear from Mark Jackson himself. And so should you.
Come on, man. Come on. At some point, the lies have got to stop. The lies have got to stop. I've sat back year after year after year, listening to lies, questioning me as a man and my integrity. For what I stand for, what I was raised on, has been questioned. I sat back and didn't say anything. My guy, the coach, the legend, Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, has a great quote that I listened to just recently. He said he lost the address to the high road. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer because there's a side of me that's fed up, that's upset that you keep on smearing my name. Today a report came out that I was fired or dismissed from calling Knicks games. Honored and privileged to have an offer bestowed upon me to back up the legend Walt Clyde Frazier calling Knicks games. Over a week ago, I turned that job down. You heard what I said. More than a week ago, I turned the job down due to the fact that it wasn't the ideal conditions and it wasn't the ideal time for me.
You know, in the interest of full disclosure, because we have an obligation to be responsible at all times to the best of our ability, particularly when you've been in this business as long as I have. So the first order of business is to say that Mark Jackson is not only a former colleague, he's a friend. I've known him for many years. I wasn't blessed and fortunate enough to know him when I was growing up in Hollis, Queens, New York, and he was right down the block near Murdoch Avenue and O'Connell Park, where he grew up just a few blocks away. I looked up to him. I was never the player that he was. I was never the basketball mind that he was. And everybody has to find their own way. But one of the greatest honors of my career is that I've come to know him and to be able to call him a friend. So I will openly confess to you, to everybody out there, that, yeah, you can accuse me of a bit of bias. Fair enough. But what's happening to him and what has been happening to him is utter and y'all are full of and you know exactly who the hell I'm talking to when I say that. Every chance you get, you throw out rumors about him. And I'm not going to even denigrate or sully his name by bringing up what those rumors have been over the years. It spanned years. Nobody ever takes the time to say, well, if it were true, even if those rumors were true, oh, it was years ago. It was years ago. Now, I remember when he got fired from the Golden State Warriors. And there's not much shade we can throw on the Golden State Warriors because the successor was Steve Kerr, who happens to be one of the top 5 coaches in the history of basketball so far as I'm concerned. But you got people who despised Mark Jackson, who would tell you Klay Thompson and Steph Curry may have never been what they ultimately became had it not been for Mark Jackson and the tutelage he provided and how it set the stage for Steve Kerr to piggyback off of and ultimately elevate not just the franchise, not just them, but himself to astronomical heights as a coach and a basketball mind in the game of basketball. And no shade on Steve Kerr whatsoever for another reason. The man was a champion before he got to Golden State. He was a champion as a player in Chicago. He was a champion as a player in San Antonio. And if Tom Thibodeau had listened to him, if Mike D'Antoni had listened to him and allowed Tom Thibodeau to come to Phoenix and be the defensive coordinator when Steve Kerr was running basketball operations in Phoenix, Phoenix might have won the title one year with Amari Stoudemire and the Matrix, Sean Marion and Steve Nash and all of those brothers. They might have done it, but it didn't happen. I say all of that to say ain't no problem. Nobody's trying to throw any shade on Steve Kerr whatsoever. But there's something to be said about somebody teaching you how to crawl and walk before you ultimately learn to run and sprint. And that is what Mark Jackson did. For a lot of other people, it would have been enough to get another job. But for somehow, some way, for some reason, Mark Jackson gets ostracized. It really pisses me off. It really does. Because it's grotesquely unfair. This man, 98 and 66, his last 2 seasons coaching in Golden State, 2012 to 2014, and can't get another job all of these years? Really? But nobody wants to bring that up. Because every time he comes close, it could be Sacramento, it could be New York, it could be somewhere, there's always some damn rumor that's coming out. Did it ever occur to some of you people out there? What if people like myself and others who covered the NBA for the last quarter century started putting out the rumors that are out there about other people? Ladies and gentlemen, I know people who've been accused of some unsavory things that are working in professional basketball. I know somebody that was fired. I take that back. I know several people who were fired for having adulterous affairs. And somebody grabbed them and gives them life and ultimately elevate them. I know people that are working in professional sports right now that have been accused of some of the most egregious things that were unlawful, that harmed other human beings. And they've been on camera talking to y'all, and y'all have no idea about them, but we do. By we, I mean those of us who cover the league. I'm getting sick and damn tired.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. I want to react to what he had to say. First of all, it seemed like Stephen A. Smith could go a lot further into what he was saying, but decided not to. He brought up some good points, which was this. He said that he knows of many people that are still employed within the NBA ecosystem in the sports world who have done a lot of questionable things, but their business has never been brought to the forefront. But for whatever reason, there seems to be this persistent attack on Mark Jackson. For those of you who may be unaware, there have been a lot of NBA coaching openings over the last, 10 years, right? And there's been a lot of positions that seem suitable for Mark Jackson where a lot of people have said, hey, why doesn't Mark Jackson get this coaching job or even get the interview? And all you see is case after case of Mark Jackson not even being mentioned for interviews. And a lot of us have been asking the question, is Mark Jackson being blackballed? And if he is being blackballed, why? Some people have said one of the reasons he's been blackballed because of his religious stance. I think he's an avid Christian. Other people have said is because of his coaching style. He coaches guys very hard. Other people have said for other reasons. But to Stephen A. Smith's point, is Mark Jackson the only controversial figure? And I'm not saying he's controversial. I'm just saying controversial based on these things that are being said. I'm not calling him a controversial person. But to make the point, is he the only one that has some drama around him? Stephen A. Smith certainly seems to feel otherwise. To me, to see Mark Jackson himself come out there and put out that statement and basically try to shut down these reports, it seems like someone is after Mark Jackson. Now, who this someone is, I have no idea. I wish Stephen A. Smith would have gone further and started listing some of these people that he believes are working behind the scenes to tarnish the legacy of Mark Jackson, because I don't know who they are. I really don't. I wish I did know, but I'm not connected like that. To me, it's a shame. It's a shame because I think that he is very good at what he does. Again, let me reiterate my original stance. I didn't like the fact that he was removed from ESPN, and we recently published a show, that was centered on an article. Let me see if I can pull it up here because it would surprise you guys. Yes, this article was actually a front office article, and the article has said this. It says ESPN financial successes raises questions about cost cutting and layoffs. This was an article that was published on November 13th from Front Office Sports. Essentially what this article is saying, and I'm just going to quickly breeze through it. ESPN has long portrayed financial struggles to its 5,000 employees. This last decade has seen multiple rounds of layoffs, including the departure of big-name talents such as Jeff Van Gundy, Keyshawn Johnson, Suzy Colbert, Max Kellerman. This summer, remaining on-air talents have accepted smaller raises or even salary cuts. Staffers behind the scenes were told to cover games remotely and limit or eliminate travel. But Disney could fetch $25 billion or more by selling ESPN. For the second time in recent weeks, the Mouse House gave possible investors a peek under the hood at ESPN's financials. It then continues on. It says, during the fourth quarter, listen to this. During the fourth quarter, Disney reported ESPN's operating income surged 16% to $987 million off of $3.5 million of 3.5 billion in revenue. In a previous SEC filing, Disney revealed Bristol delivered 2.9 billion in profits off 16 billion in revenue to Burbank's coffers in fiscal 2022. The network's profits have grown for 2 straight fiscal years. Some former ESPNers resent the billions in profits siphoned out of Bristol over the years. Others believe they paid with their jobs for mistakes made by Disney 3,000 miles away. This year, returning Disney chairman Bob Iger announced his plan to slash 7,000 jobs with the goal of 5.5 billion in costs. It then says this: a lot of employees are asking, "What the f?" complained one ex-ESPNer. We were told eternally, don't travel, no Christmas parties, and lay off and lay off and lay off. Then you see the numbers and you learn we earned $3 billion. So to me, maybe there was a way to keep him after all. But to me, it seems like there's something more going on here. And I wish that whoever had the information would reveal it, because ultimately it would give Mark Jackson the justice he deserves. Because now it's to the point where he is coming out and putting out public statements. And that speaks volumes. So what I want to know from you guys, number one, what do you think about Stephen A. Smith's position on Mark Jackson? Number two, what do you think about the conflicting reports? One of them saying that the Knicks banned Mark Jackson, and then Mark Jackson saying he turned down the job. What do you think about that conflict right there? And number three, do you think Mark Jackson has been blackballed? And if you do feel that he's been blackballed, why do you think that is? Whatever you guys think, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section, and we catch you guys on the next show. Peace.